Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing and incredible day it is. Let us wait for these weekend tubes to warm themselves up on this incredible Monday. We've got a jamming stream today. Liberals are hitting the roof, absolutely losing it. Several different things filed in the various courts that we'll unpack today. Paying close attention to Elon's email because they are not happy about that at all. And so just want to make sure that we're coming in loud and clear. Looks like things are alive and well. Hopefully it's working. I believe it is. We're live. Tremendous news. All right, my friends. Now, before we jump into anything else out there, want to send some mega shout outs and congratulations over to our friend Dan Bongino, who is now going over to be the deputy director of the FBI. And we spent some time this morning talking about this on the Membo stream, but wanted to pay our congratulations here officially. Dan Bongino, he posted this today, says now he officially accepts the role as deputy director of the FBI, telling us that he, from Stuart, Florida, has accepted the position of the deputy director of the FBI as part of a broader effort to restore public trust and reinforce the integrity of one of America's most critical institutions. Bongino extends his deepest gratitude to President Donald J. Trump, Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel for their trust and confidence. His decision to step into this role is driven solely by a commitment to service and a belief that law enforcement and national security institutions must be strengthened. Dan Bongino said the following: I've spent my life in public service, beginning with the NYPD and continuing through my time as a Secret Service agent, working under both Republican and Democrat administrations. I've witnessed firsthand the dedication and sacrifice of the men and women in these agencies who serve with integrity and honor. The statement says this role is not about politics. It's about professionalism, leadership, and accountability. Bongino brings a diverse body of experience from his years protecting American presidents, investigating national security threats, and working in the trenches of law enforcement. His focus is on supporting the good men and women in the FBI who remain committed to the mission, saying there are dedicated people in the FBI who take their oath to the Constitution seriously. They deserve leadership that will back them up, protect their mission, and ensure they can do their jobs, Bongino said, saying that Bongino will work alongside Attorney General Bondi and Director Patel to implement President Trump's agenda to keep the homeland safe and to ensure the FBI remains an institution Americans can trust. He finishes saying, my career has always been about service. I'm here to work. I'm here to lead. And I'm here to ensure that America's law enforcement institutions uphold the values and integrity they were built upon, said Dan. So amazing. We're very excited to see Dan over there. We have watched him become a massive force for truth and integrity on our side. And it's a thrill that he can join Pam Bondi, Kash Patel to make up the Constitution Justice Avengers over there in the Justice Department. It's going to be amazing to see. Now, we'll miss him out here on the tubes, but maybe he can do some live streams from inside the halls of the FBI. We'll see. So shout out to Dan. Very cool news. And that was a fun thing to wake up with, knowing that Dan has accepted that position and will be heading over there soon enough. Now, in addition to that, we've got some great stuff coming up. We're talking about the email that sent the left to the moon. We've got multiple lawsuits on that. In one, they're asking for sanctions. That's how mad they are. And then we'll talk about trans prisoners today. Yeah, it's a thing. So they're not being transported to their rightful facility. This is going to be great. All right, so we're talking about the trans prisoners. That's going to come up. We'll save that for the end. But it's a beautiful day, my friends. And so let's just get right into it, because here is the big story on the day. More aggressive. That's the demand of President Trump, telling Elon that, Elon is doing a great job, but I would like to see him get more aggressive, saying, remember, we have a country to save, but ultimately to make America greater than ever before, Make America Great Again, MAGA. Posted that over the weekend. Elon, executing the president's plan and working hard to save the country, wasted no time at all. Moments later, he said, "Will do, Mr. President. I'm on it. No brakes on this train." He followed that up with this post. He said, consistent with President Trump's instructions, all federal employees will shortly receive an email requesting to understand what they got done last week. Failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. So thousands of bureaucrats over the weekend were sitting there, opening up another beer, another bag of Cheetos, and started screaming, "Oh no, I got to tell them that I didn't do anything last week because I was out protesting," waddling around the streets of DC, screaming about unfairness and equity and Trump and blah, blah, blah. So they didn't like that one. And several of them have sued already or resued, filed additional complaints that add in this new allegation against Elon. Now, Libs at TikTok got a screenshot of an email that landed in somebody's inbox and said the following: "Here's what it looks like. What did you do last week? Please reply to this email with approximately 5 bullet points of what you accomplished last week and CC your manager on the plan. Please do not send any classified information, links, or attachments at all. The deadline is this Monday at 11:59 Eastern Time." So that's by close of business today. And we're waiting for the clock to continue counting down. So that's what the email looks like, inboxed into thousands of people's, hundreds of thousands probably of people's inboxes. And the reason Elon said this is so important is because a significant number of people who work or are supposed to be working for the federal government are doing so little work that they're not checking their email at all. In fact, in some cases, we believe non-existent people or the identities of dead people are being used to collect paychecks. In other words, there is outright fraud that is happening, and they are trying to get to the bottom of it. So Elon explaining why this is happening. Now, the unions and many people who are in support of government grift and against reporting what you did last week flipped out. So this letter got drafted by the AFL-CIO. You've heard that phrase a lot. American Federation of Government Employees, gigantic union of all the government bureaucrats. They wrote this. They said, on behalf of the over 800,000 federal employees that are in our little hack union, which is wild, like they're in a union against the federal government, which we pay for. And when they when they collect their paychecks from the government, because we pay taxes go into the government, then they pay the employees, the unions skim some right off the top of that and suck it right out of the government employees' paychecks to go into these unions, which are basically mandatory. It says, so they write, okay, so this got sent over to OPM, Office of Personnel Management. It says, "Hey, AFL-CIO, I write to address an email sent to all federal employees yesterday from the OPM. The email titled, 'What did you do last week?' was sent from the unsigned and shared HR@opm.gov mailbox. It says this raises significant concerns. As you're aware, the email directs recipients to, quote, 'Please reply to this email with approximately 5 bullet points of what you accomplished this week and CC your manager. Please do not send any classified information, links, or attachments. Deadline is Monday, close of day.'" So they say they'd lost it. "This email fails to identify any legal authority permitting the OPM to demand the requested information." Like, who do you think you are emailing your employees? How dare you do that? "OPM's actions conflict with the law's delegating authority for the management of the federal employees to their respective agencies. So OPM and their own regulations can't send emails to everyone else. Federal employees report to their agencies through their established chains of command. They don't report to the OPM." So Elon colored outside the lines. Additionally, the email's vague disclaimer does not provide sufficient guidance on what the information employees should avoid disclosing because they're too dumb to realize it's complicated. I don't know. Can I send this? Can I not send this? I'm just a government worker. "Federal employees have a duty to ensure that sensitive information, data, and records are only used and disclosed for authorized purposes." Okay, so don't send it, babies. "The email was nothing more than an irresponsible and sophomoric attempt to create confusion and to bully the hardworking federal employees that serve our country. We know. Civil servants. I'm waiting for that one. I have received numerous reports. There it is. From dedicated civil servants. There it is. Including those who care for our veterans, I know, and safeguard our nations. Yes, I know, and save little old ladies and rescue kittens who are drowning in the Nile River. Expressing frustration over the email's tone and intent. It hurt their fifis because they don't like to think about their total lack of productivity over the last week. Rather than fostering professionalism and respect for their work, and that's the point. We don't know whether to respect your work or not. It's not respect by default because you happen to be in the government for a long period of time and just sat there doing nothing. If you have productivity, report it accordingly and you'll be fine. And if not, if you're fired, you can literally tweet Elon. This hastily written email left many feeling undervalued and intimidated. So anybody who felt that way should be fired immediately, right? Obviously. So that's like first of the list. So do you have a name? Do you have names of those people, who they were? No, let us know. We want to send them a bouquet of flowers. Yeah, what's their full name? Send that over. By allowing the unelected and unhinged Elon to dictate OPM's actions, you've demonstrated a lack of regard for the integrity of federal employees and their critical work. Now, it's also clear that OPM has not assessed the cost to government resulting from this thoughtless email. It's going to save a lot of money because whoever didn't respond is now on a list. By issuing this directive, OPM is actively pulling federal employees away from their critical duties without the regard for the consequences. It takes 2 minutes to just write something down. As just 2 examples, a VA surgeon's attention. Oh no! The surgeon had to pull away. The surgeon's attention belongs in the operating room and not in his email because he can't say, I saved 5 people's lives last week. 1 heart, 1 lung, 1 knee, 1 brain, 1 elbow. And an air traffic controller's attention to keeping the sky safe. Literally, they say things are going to start falling out of the sky. Not on dealing with this unclear and unlawful distraction. Okay. This request and the resulting confusion is not just appropriate. It's disruptive to the essential government functions. And OPM's failure to consider this demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the daily responsibilities of federal employees and the vital roles they perform in keeping our country safe and operational. We believe that employees have no obligation to respond. It's plainly unlawful. Bunch of people sued. I am also requesting the OPM rescind the email and apologize for stressing them out. Please respond to me by tonight, Sunday, February 23rd at 11:59. Yeah, right. Everett Kelly, national president, sends this nasty letter talking about the sophomoric Elon Musk, calling him unhinged for just asking for proof of life from federal employees and the federal bureaucrats. You can see how upset they are. Very mad because they've never been held accountable in their lives. How dare we have to report on what we've accomplished here? So they updated their lawsuit. You can see this was resubmitted 2/23. Didn't take long. It's a 34-pager. This was a second draft, as we like to say. There was a first complaint. They amended it because they wanted to shove in all of the email whining into this complaint. And they did that. So you can see the AFL-CIO, the same people who wrote that little screed about how dare you hold us accountable. They said here that on February 13th, the new OPM ordered federal agents. There's really 2 parts to this. One is about the emails. The other is about the firing. Remember, all of the probationary employees who came in were all fired rapidly, without much haste, without much waste of time. They did it with a lot of haste. And thousands were gone. Probationary employees are employees of the competitive service in their first year or transition. And Trump, when he came in, they terminated these employees en masse. On pretextual grounds. They said, it's our policy to fire you. But Congress controls who fires whom, and OPM lacks the authority to be able to do this. They're an agency with no statutory authority, but they ordered the agencies to use a template email. They said, OPM, all the Treasury Department, all these other agencies, use this template to terminate these workers. And they did. Saying that that one falsely informed employees about the reasons for their termination based on performance. But that wasn't right. They didn't lose their jobs because of performance. It is. It's because they're not performing anything useful to the government, right? Now, the federal agencies that followed OPM's directive did not otherwise have plans to do this. They only did it because Elon's a big bully. Now, as of the filing of this complaint, tens of thousands of probationary employees across dozens of federal agencies have already been terminated in a summary assembly line fashion. Each day, more employees receive notices of termination of their federal employment. They've been conducted summarily. They haven't gotten warnings, and which is generally how it goes when you're fired. It's like, we're going to fire you in 2 weeks, just so get ready for it. OPM, the federal agency charged with implementing this, in one fell swoop, has perpetrated one of the most massive employment, they call it frauds, in the history of this country. Doesn't that feel good? Telling tens of thousands of workers they're being fired for performance reasons when they most certainly were not. Well, they were hired for unnecessary reasons. The performance of the federal government doesn't require them to be here, not doing anything useful. So it is a performance reason. Now, you might say it's performance like they had bad performance. In a way, it was. You might want it to be like the old government standards for performance reasons are just like, I mean, it depends what standards you ask for, but it's like, if it's like the Bill Clinton standard, right? You can have sex in the Oval Office. If it's the Fannie Willis standard, you can have sex when you're the DA and sleep with your special counsel and steal hundreds of thousands of dollars from the Georgia taxpayers and all like what is performance? What does that mean to you? Government employees, in many cases, are not fired for anything at all. So yeah, the standards are different, right? Your performance is different than our interpretation of performance. Sitting around not doing anything useful is poor performance, so they're gone. OPM's program is an unlawful ultra-virus action outside the scope, blah, blah, blah. Now, what we're going to see as we fast forward, all these parties, just to be clear, they're all unions. Wild how many of these people are popping up. And remember, each one of these, in my opinion, is basically grifting off of their union base. We've covered prior lawsuits here. They got 800,000 federal civilian employees, and in other claim, right, their damages, they claim the reason this is harming them, the reason why they have standing to even be in this lawsuit at all, is because they're being harmed, right? Otherwise, what are they doing here? You have to have some standing. The idea for them is that they're losing money. That's their harm. And how is the money going away? Well, when you're fired from the federal government, you no longer get a paycheck from them, and they no longer stick their grubby little fingers in there and siphon off dollars when it comes your direction. So they're losing money. And just look at all of them. 1.4 million members, 3,400 local unions. Ugh, disgusting. Plaintiff AFGE labor union over in San Francisco. United Nurses. Yeah, how many there? Here's another one. 4,000 employees, VA systems, 30,000 members throughout the United States, 3,400 members in this one. This has got 14,000 members with wilderness study areas. Amazing, doing amazing work there, studying the wilderness. Great. Vote Vets Action Fund, also nonpartisan, which means it's probably highly partisan. Purpose is to lift up veterans. 417,000 people in those organizations. And I want to be clear, okay? Anytime I mock the names of these organizations, I'm not mocking the name that they've stolen to use for their organization. This came up during a locals conversation, but last week I was reading about the AIDS doctors, and I just kept saying, oh yeah, the AIDS doctors, the AIDS doctors this, the AIDS doctors that. I've got no particular opinion on AIDS aside from anything else. Could have been the cancer doctors, it could have been the alcoholic recovery doctors, it could have been, breast cancer awareness. I don't care what it is. The point is they pervert these names, they gobble these names up, and then they act as though they're beyond reproach. Because most people are unwilling to criticize those entities. I can't criticize the AIDS doctors. I can't criticize the veterans here. Vote vets. I can't criticize them. And then guys like Norm Eisen, Mark Elias, all of the other fraudsters who have been stealing money for decades now in the USAID and elsewhere. And then Norm Eisen and Mark Elias and those guys are getting funded from Democrats. But then they create these names like States Democracy United. You go, oh, you can't criticize our group. We're for states being united in purpose of democracy. You go, that's not what you do. You file lawsuits against Trump. Don't claim you're nonpartisan. You're clearly partisan. So we see that pattern over and over again. So I just wanted to make that quick point of clarification. So they bring these claims. Now, here is what is brought in this refiling of the amended complaint. It says Congress authorized various agencies, they cite those for us, created the OPM by statute, saying there's a bunch of people who are all getting fired. Approximately 200,000 probationary employees getting nuked out of here. The mass termination has set up probationary employees and others, and the probationary period is leading to the termination here. Now, federal agencies may also terminate employees as part of a RIF. They're giving us a lot of rules here on how this all works, which we can fast forward through. Trump came in, made some orders. OPM said, give me a 200-character limit explanation, which is like a couple sentences, on why you should be here. Then the decision was made. Probationary workers got canned. They're out of here. All of these agencies are on the list. CDC, Housing and Urban Development, Forest Service, Veterans Affairs, blah, 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 all the rest of them. Okay, giant list, all of these disgusting bureaucracies. While implementing the orders, numerous federal agencies informed workers that OPM ordered the terminations. And for example, they give us a conversation here about how that went down. Then they used template letters and they said, based on your performance, right? Based on your performance, it's not been adequate to justify further employment at the agency. Okay, based on your performance. So they're like, this is offensive. I was fired because my performance didn't meet the standards, but I never got in trouble under the agency. Nobody ever gave me a write-up or reported me to my manager. I was just doing my job. I never even got in trouble. They say, well, based on your performance, you've not demonstrated that further employment at the agency would be in the public interest, okay? So, and this is, I think, is important, this language, because you're going to hear this refrain constantly. Like they're smearing federal workers. They're saying, you did something bad, like your performance was bad, like you stole something, you lied about something, you failed on a project, you didn't meet a deadline, lost a bunch of files, created a classified email server, faked search warrants, kicked indoors, whatever it is. You didn't do any of those like bad things per se. You were just kind of doing regular government work, but it wasn't good enough. Like your performance, we need standout people. And you weren't stand out. So your performance is just not meeting that standard. So they'll take the former definition and say that is smearing and insulting, whereas that's not what actually the government said. The agency finds that based on your performance, that you've not demonstrated that your further employment would be in the public interest. It doesn't mean you did anything bad. It just means that you're not that good. You're not adding that much to what we want to accomplish. So it's like you might be a great person, but it's not good enough for us. Following language also, some employees got this. You are not fit for continued employment. Unfortunately, the agency finds you are not fit for continued employment because your ability, knowledge, and skills do not fit the agency's current needs. Exactly. So it's not like you're bad. Your knowledge is bad. It's just we don't need that. Your performance has not been adequate to justify further employment at the agency. So they'll fight over that. I didn't do anything bad. My performance was great. I got great performance reviews. I worked from home every single day and I logged in. And my computer was on for the whole day. So I didn't do anything wrong. And I'm suing you now because I'm a civil servant who's mad. The termination letters issued to probationary employees continue to cite for performance reasons, right? It's not a smear. It's like your performance just doesn't match the needs of a high performance government now. Despite the citation of these termination letters, they're offended. Many terminated employees, here you go, they got excellent performance reviews. And you can laugh at a lot of these because it's government bureaucrats doing performance reviews for other government bureaucrats. Everybody does well. Nobody gets fired. Supervisors were not consulted as to the performance of the individual probationary employees before they were terminated. They got overruled. USA Today said fired probationary employees all said they were never told of performance problems. We all did great. One hadn't even been in the job long enough to have a performance review, right? And the performance was not needed any further. Another one had to relocate 1,700 miles, which sucks. But now they'll have a new home and a clean calendar and find something new and exciting. So this is the impact, and the impact, they go, it's very harmful. Lots of people are being fired. Lots of these probationary employees are working in all of the most sympathetic industries you can think about, like cancer treatment, addiction recovery, prosthetics, burn pit exposure studies, and more. Yes, we know. The mass termination also directly harmed vote vets and more. And the common defense also faces imminent harm to itself and its members because we are going to lose money. Now, here is the latest. So they just amended their complaint and they dropped this whole section in here. Oh, and California is going to burn down now. The Forest Service efforts to remove underbrush are on pause. So California is going to catch fire now because of this change. It's a good thing it hasn't caught fire before, but now it's going to be in real trouble. All right, so here is a big section they just added, fresh out of the oven. We know Elon sent his email, and they introduce a whole section. They write, all right, look, OPM's new reporting program, they call it a new reporting program for all federal workers. It's an email. They say on February 22nd, Elon Musk began to implement a new mandatory reporting program for all federal employees throughout the federal government. OPM has ordered all federal employees to submit email reports justifying their work. That was Elon's email. Prior to February 22nd, federal employees were not required to submit any reports about their work to OPM. They didn't have to because no one cared. So now there is, they say, according to us, there's no OPM rule, there's no regulation, there's no policy, there's no program ever in United States history has purported to require all federal workers to submit reports to OPM. Like, you can't send an email. No one passed a regulation that said you could do that. So how dare you do that? You have to go to Congress and ask them if you can send emails to everybody in order to operate the executive branch. Because Congress says who can email whom. So here's how this went. On February 22nd, employees throughout the federal government employed in many different agencies received the same email from the address called hr@opm.gov. Writing, prior to January 20th, no such email address existed for use by OPM or within the federal government, so it's new. On information and belief, this email is being sent under the purported authority of the OPM. Now, on information and belief, this email was sent to over 2 million federal employees. This message was sent with high importance. The message was not signed by any government official, nor did it identify the head of the agency on whose behalf it was sent, the authority or program under which it was sent. How dare you send this email? Who is it? Where did it come from? The title of this email is "What did you do last week?" The body of the email said, please reply to this email with approximately 5 bullet points of what you accomplished last week and CC your manager. Please do not send any classified information, links, or attachments. The deadline is Monday at 11:59. Now, on February 22nd, everybody's like, where'd this email come from? I don't know. A social media account purporting to belong to an individual named Elon Musk. Who could that be purporting? I don't know. Who has been identified by the president as the head of the federal agency known as DOGE, which I think is actually inaccurate. So they have officially filed Elon as a special government employee who's a senior advisor to the president. He's not actually even officially a part of the DOGE team at all. Officially, according to government filings from the Trump administration, he posted the following message. So that's not even right, but posted the following message: consistent with Trump's instructions, all federal employees are going to get an email. Failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. Everybody goes, what the hell? Kash Patel, Kristi Noem, many others were going, whoa, right? And we saw other emails back from even some agency heads say, hold on a minute, wait till further ruling before you start firing off emails. Now, prior to February 22nd, no notice was published in the Federal Register or anyone else about any program, rule, or anything requiring all federal employees to report up. Prior to February 22nd, no notice was published anywhere about any policy, about any regulation, about emails from HR at OPM. And nobody talked about resignation until today. Now, OPM has not complied with any procedural requirements under the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, which they bring up a lot, to constantly say, you have to go through proper mechanisms before you change things. Subsequent to the OPM email notification, at least some federal agencies, including the FBI, began telling their employees not to respond to this request. And we've seen some of that. So they're suing, as you can see. So what they want to do is order the OPM to stop terminating probationary employees, saying you cannot fire these people anymore. Saying Congress exercise legislative authority, Congress creates the agencies, Trump has to do whatever Congress says. Basically, the executive branch is just an order-taking agency that just does whatever Congress says. There's no really even need for a president. Just like Joe Biden, he just signs whatever's in front of him. There's no take care at all. OPM's actions also exceed the authority that Congress gave them, and saying they're not authorized. Article 2 is meaningless, and Congress overrides whatever President Trump wants to do. So they make their claims. They're saying it's arbitrary and capricious. They also tell us that it is inconsistent with what Congress wrote in the statutes. And so they're asking that they declare all of Trump's new programs that fires the probationary employees to stop, and calling it unlawful, and requiring federal employees also to send the email are unlawful. So you don't have to respond at all. They want injunctive relief, setting aside OPM's order, saying nobody needs to respond to that email. You're not going to be fired, and we're going to send you an apology so your feelings are no longer hurt. Stop terminating people. Require Trump and everybody and Elon to rescind other prior unlawful terminations and hire everybody back, I suppose. Enter injunctive relief to the order from the email, telling everybody don't take any action against employees who fail to respond. We want attorney's fees and any other relief that the court deems proper. And of course, as per usual, as we pay close attention to here, look who is filing in this case, as always, Norm Eisen. So add him to the list. Another one from Norm Eisen. He signed several of these that we've talked about here and is involved in many other groups and developing funds for other groups that he's not filing on. This group is Altshuler Burzon LLP. So looks like Norm might be signing under their name and then moving for Pro Hoc Vice to get in there. So interesting that they're filing this in San Francisco, right? Another very favorable jurisdiction, very upset about Elon. So we'll see what this judge does here. We have seen most of the filings here out of the East Coast, Maryland, Rhode Island, of course, DC. Now we're back in San Francisco. So we'll see what is happening on that one. Now we've got some reaction to a lot of this because Jeffrey A. Tucker is a person who posted a great piece on this. He's an author, publisher over at Brownstone. You know, a lot of this is happening pretty quickly, but we got to think about this in context. What is Elon doing? He said, I'm concerned that many people do not understand the historical and institutional context in which the Doge labor reforms are unfolding. They look at this as if these are some random, chaotic, arbitrary, strange, even cruel measures to impose on a devoted civil service, which is like, gag me, my words. The reality is very different. I'm not even sure Elon entirely understands this. You know, for more than a century, even dating back to 1883, the civil service, so-called, has grown and grown without check from the elected branch, either the presidency or the legislature. The bureaucracies have ballooned from a few to 450 or so. 450 or so, okay? So more agencies than years in existence in the United States of America. 450 is longer than we've even been a country. And I've heard Mark Andreessen make that point and others. It is shocking. It's like new agencies, new agency for that, new agency for that, new agency for that. It's like you buying, it's like shopping spree for new agencies. Stop it. You're cut off. The bloat and the absurdities have grown too. So get this, no one has ever known what to do about it. Not Coolidge, not Hoover, not Nixon, not Reagan, not Clinton, not Obama, not Bush, no one. No president has been able to crack this nut. The only reforms ever to have made it through are those that make the administrative state bigger, never smaller. Countless cabinet secretaries have come and gone, always with the intention of making a change, but leaving sad and demoralized, outwitted, outgunned, ultimately devoured. No president has seriously taken on this problem because they simply did not know how. The unions, we just read from, are powerful. The intimidation from the deep state institutional knowledge is overwhelming, right? Everybody hoards their little silos of information. You can't work anything because it's the same story that Jim Jordan told about the guy with the key at the national parks. Saying somebody, when he's on vacation, he's the only guy with the keys to the toilets and people lock themselves in the toilets. He's at the national park. That guy got fired. Where's the guy with the keys? Because nobody else has keys because that guy hoarded the keys. That was his job security, hoarding the keys. Happening all over the country. Then there's institutional knowledge that they won't share, so nothing can function. The fear of the media. has always been powerful. And every single president comes to power vaguely feeling threatened by the intelligence agencies, some even shot in the head by them, maybe. The industries that have captured every single agency were also far too powerful to unseat or to control. This combination of institutional inertia has blocked serious reform for a full century. No one has even dared. No one has even had a theory or strategy about what to do about this problem. It had become so terrible that most people in politics have simply surrendered, like homeowners who know there are rats in the basement and bats in the attic, but long ago gave up trying to fix the issue. All this time, the American people have felt themselves ever more oppressed, weighed upon, taxed and regulated, spied upon, browbeaten, and otherwise overwhelmed. Voting never made any difference because the politicians are no longer controlling the system. The bureaucracies ruled it all. The Biden years underscored the point. We didn't even need a conscious and present executive. We only needed a figurehead to pretend to be president, just like the Soviet premiers in the old days. The institutions ran everything and the people controlled nothing. How to deal with this? Trump alone figured it out in his last term. He simply took charge of the agencies in a limited way. There were screams of horror and plots galore. They performed a long stream of clever schemes to destroy him and show him who is boss, which is not the democratically elected president, but the forces behind the scenes. The job of the president, goes the message from all insiders, is to pretend to be in charge, but not actually do anything meaningful. Shut up, mug up, obey, and disturb nothing. Let the administrative state do its thing without oversight or disruption, and then you will get your honorary library, your best-selling autobiography, and your Netflix show, and go down in history as great. Trump refused the deal. Look what happened. 4 years have gone by, and Trump is back again, this time with a determination to slay this beast, one that he knows all too well. The efforts of Doge and Maha and MAGA are epic in scope, breaking a century of pathetic acquiescence towards the deep, middle, and shallow states, at last using moral courage to confront the problem head on, come what may. They are profoundly aware that they must act fast and with some degree of ferocity, even recklessness, else we will default back to the status quo of leaders who pretend to be in charge while the embedded systems run things behind the scenes. It has been this way for too long. The voters this time have demanded change and mustered the faith to believe that change is possible. This is precisely what Doge is attempting, to make good on a promise that for once the voters actually believed was credible. They simply must succeed. There might never be another chance. The way of failure is the path everyone knows the U.S. was on towards economic stagnation, political sclerosis, and eventual irrelevance in the unfolding of the next stage of social evolution. Banger from our friend Jeffrey A. Tucker, reposting that at the top of our timeline. If you want to follow him, of course you do. Sclerosis. Is that right? Sclerosis. Anyways, that is exactly what's happening. And Elon and the Trump team are moving fast. Now, here was another statement from Representative Ralph Norman. Said not a single government agency is occupying even half of their office space, for crying out loud. Scoliosis? Or maybe that's it. Here's Ralph Norman explaining, get back in your buildings.
Price tag that the taxpayers pay is right at $271 billion a year. Is it too much to ask for them to verify why they're making an average salary of $106,000 a year? Do you think in the private sector that single mom who is working two jobs at a restaurant can't justify where she was, or the hygienist at the dentist's office can't verify how many patients they saw? The absurdity and I guess the arrogance of the workers who says that's a heavy lift is what's wrong with that's what the Americans are sick and tired of. It's not their money. We're the ones who are paying the bills. We have a right to know the price tag.
It's time to clean it up. That's what's happening. But the unions who get massive paydays grifting off the American taxpayer, and the employees who should be entitled to that money want it to remain a gray area so the grift can continue on indefinitely. So that is one filing. Now let's take a look at another filing because, man, they're asking for sanctions now over this email. Liberals asking for sanctions against Elon Musk and the Trump administration. You can see this was a very short filing, that was submitted over the weekend came in from Kelly B. McClanahan. She is an attorney in Washington, D.C. for National Security Counselors at nationalsecuritylaw.org. And after Elon's email went out and told the federal government to get their act in gear and let us know who is alive and working, they sent this one. All right, listen, Your Honor, we're asking for sanctions here. This is how mad we are. On February 23rd, this entity, this law firm representing Jane Doe's 1 through 7, we're going to look into what this lawsuit is more about in a second, but I want to share with you the hottest item on the docket. She sent this one skidding in. Said, we served Trump's OMB with a motion for sanctions. We busted them. They're in trouble. They did something bad. What happened? Now, in the spirit of that rule, the Jane Doe's 1 through 7 will not elaborate on the content of that motion at this time. And we'll see if we can piece together what is inside. I think I have an idea. Other than to say that the allegations are new and relate primarily to OPM's presentation to the court of the Privacy Impact Assessment, the PIA, for the government-wide email system. All right, so there's this government-wide system called the GWES, Government-Wide Email System. Like, anybody have an acronym for that? Some genius was like, let's just call it the GWES. Like, what does that mean? Government-Wide Email System. Love it. Do it. Actually, that's a good decision. I'm glad they didn't spend a lot of time on that. So that worked out well. But anyways, they have this new email system. And at some point, OPM is getting sued by these people. These people say they have access to our data. OPM came back to the court. They gave a presentation to the court. In that presentation, they must have said something. Must have said something like, this is what we're doing with the data. So they say, you remember that, Judge, right? Now, in light of rapidly unfolding events over the weekend, materially misrepresented the allegedly voluntary nature of the responses to emails sent using the system, in addition with newly discovered evidence that, as we told the court back then, OPM did not purge the government email system of information of non-employees, okay? Instead, they installed filters to keep the emails about the deferred resignation program from being sent to them. Okay, giant run-on sentence there. Tons of commas and multiple statements, but I think we can piece together what's happening. So the government, the OPM, came to the court. They said, Your Honor, this is how we're handling the data. This is a data lawsuit saying Doge can't have access to these things. OPM can't have access to these things. Government came back and said, we don't actually have access to these things, or we'll delete these things, or there's some change that we're going to make so that non-executive branch employees, aka contractors, don't get emails. We know exactly what happened. Over the weekend, Elon, somebody used the GWES system, sent everybody an email. Guess what happened? Somebody who this law firm represents, one of these Jane Does, we don't know who they are because they're proceeding pseudo-anonymously because they're cowards, in my opinion. We don't want to be attacked. So we're civil servants who've sacrificed everything. We have to hide who we are. Why? Because you're civil servants and you're being accused of something? You can't use your name? Anyways, we'll leave that one. I could riff on that one. Because the January Sixers, right? Remember when the government, we'll just do it now. Remember when the government smeared J6ers who had the presumption of innocence? Their names were paraded around by the government. Now, these people who claim to be civil servants don't even want to fight for their positions. So they'll sue the government, demand money, demand entitlement, demand their jobs, demand all of this stuff, and they'll do it pseudo-anonymously because they want that grift to continue without putting their name behind it. Show us who you are. Put your name out there. Why do you have to hide behind it? Because we'll criticize your lawsuit like here on this channel? What are you concerned about? We just want to did you do something amazing? Are you an amazing employee? Do you have some credentials behind you or not? Maybe that's why you're fired, but they don't want to have anybody look into that. They just would rather proceed anonymously. Anyways, so saying that a motion for sanctions now must not be filed or presented to the court according to some rules. Like, in other words, we can't really file this right now, but we have to. Because OPM is now emailing everybody, we have no choice but to act now. And they wrote this. Simply put, here's what happened. OPM sent an email demanding that all employees reply to the email with a list of things they did last week. And today, Trump stated that if someone does not reply, Trump said, well, they're sort of semi-fired or they're fired, according to Elon. That was posted as of today. So that's what happened. The OPM went in there. They must have told the judge, we don't even have their email addresses anymore, judge. Like, we deleted their emails. Then one of their clients, one of these nameless Jane Does, and they must be all Jane, so all female, so 7 women, great. All sue, don't even want to use their names. One of them got an email. They're like, aha, lawyer, guess what? They told you in court that they deleted an email, but they didn't. I got one. Well, here's the problem. So they probably saw in the header or something that there were filters to keep emails from being sent to certain people. And so they caught them because they told you that they did something with the data and they didn't. So now we know we shouldn't be filing a motion for sanctions, but this happened. Extraordinarily controversial from Elon to ask government bureaucrats what they've done, and arguably unlawful actions with the GWES at rapid pace, compelling federal employees to submit more information to a system, saying they said that everything would be voluntary. Plaintiffs now maintain that the specific facts of this case warrant shortening the safe harbor period so that we can move for sanctions. Accordingly, we were asked the court to set another time in which the OPM, the Trump administration, must respond to their motion and then allow us to file for sanctions anytime after February 28th, right? They want to hit him with sanctions because they're claiming they caught him at something. The undersigned communicated with OPM's counsel, but due to a potential miscommunication, he can't state their position. And OPM's counsel was unreachable for clarification by the time we had to file this motion for unrelated personal medical reasons. All right, so hopefully whatever's going on with that family or dude is good. Accordingly, he is filing this as an opposed motion. But if he receives clarification that OPM does not oppose this motion, he'll update the court. A proposed order accompanies this. Yeah, so he's going to oppose it because he doesn't want to agree with your request for sanctions, essentially. So they are furious about this, and I'm not sure what they think they've caught here because the judge has already come out and issued an order in this case, and this order came out about a week ago on the same vein, and they actually lost this, right? So they were suing about data. These are the Jane Does. This is the same lawsuit, and this is the order from the court where he's saying you lose. You can't force them to use or not use this email system. This is an order about emails. It says, in late January 2025, the OPM began a test of a new capability. It said that they could send important communications to all civilian federal employees from a single email address. This has already been in the works. It's not new. The OPM subsequently began using this new system to send messages to most, if not all, individuals with government email addresses. The new system uses the email address called hr@opm.gov. Okay, so this has already been in motion. They didn't set this up over the weekend. It's known as the GWES. Now, this class action challenges the process by which they implemented the new system. So the Jane Does can't sue. You can't email us. Plaintiffs are 2 federal executive branch office employees and 5 other individuals who have .gov email addresses, but are not executive branch employees. So it looks like it's 7 women, 2 employees, 2 government contractors. They say the OPM failed to comply with the government rules, which is to conduct a privacy impact assessment. You have to do some stupid study before you initiate a new collection of information, right? So Congress, like, this is how the bureaucracy embeds itself. Before you change anything, you have to do a privacy impact assessment before you email everybody in the government. Oh, and then that has to go through processes, and then it's like an environmental study. Then there's multiple disagreements. Then you have to, appeal it or something. Somebody sues about the impact panels. The whole thing's litigated. You can't change crap for years. So that's what they're doing. They say he changed a bunch of stuff and didn't do it according to the rules. And then they threw together, once they realized, oh, we have to do a PIA before we can email everybody, then they just threw together one. They're like, well, just throw a bunch of spreadsheets together. Who cares? Whatever. According to these Janes, the OPM's failure to prepare a meaningful privacy impact assessment has left vast amounts of private data at risk. Government email addresses at risk of disclosure in case the GWES is hacked. So the reason we do these studies is to make sure data is secure, no one's getting access, blah, blah. Now, the OPM, writes the judge, for its part, contends that it was not required to prepare a PIA because OPM's section reading of this section does not apply to the collection of information about government employees. It's about government employees here. We're not going after members of the public. The PIA is for the public. And even if that's wrong, either because it misread that statute or because they inadvertently collected email addresses from individuals who do not work for the federal government but use a .gov or a .mil email address, whatever, they say, we don't know. But we got the PIA. So here's your little PIA study. That's all that's required. So here's our study. And now that we've done the study, we've complied with the statutory regulations. And so there's nothing you can do. You can't examine the substance and accuracy of the PIA, right? Because they're going to say, well, this PIA is crap. What's ours? We have the ability to create it. We created it. The court can't have the jurisdiction to tell us to do a better job at it or to change it. So now all that is done. They've got their little report on changing this. Pending before the court is a motion for a TRO. Okay, the Jane Does sued. Stop the OPM from touching our emails. But, says the judge, the plaintiffs have failed to carry their burden of saying that, first of all, they have standing to bring this action. Like, why can they sue? And that they likely will suffer irreparable injury in the absence of emergency relief. They failed on both of those things. So part of me is thinking that Elon saw this order and is like, great, we just won. Now I can use this email system because these 7 Jane Does who are complaining about getting emails in their inbox lost. The court will accordingly deny their motion. They lose. They have no standing, and getting an email from the OPM doesn't create irreparable injury. So get out of here. Here's the background. In 2002, Congress passed the E-Government Act to streamline government use, whatever that means. They created a bunch of laws. E-Government Act, you can see here in 2003, the OMB did some other stuff. When an agency is required to prepare a PIA, the agency's CIO, the Chief Information Officer, must review the PIA and more. Then issue guidance and blah, blah, blah. Lots of stuff they're supposed to do. Those are the rules. Now, here's what happened. Summarizing the factual background is challenging in this case, says the judge, because the OPM is yet to submit an administrative record, and these Jane Does cite to a series of news reports, but they haven't offered any declarations or anything else. So like they're suing, the people suing, their evidence is crap, and the Trump administration is not giving us any clear response because the Trump administration is saying like, it's none of your business. Like, get out of here. You're not entitled to that. You don't have jurisdiction to run the executive branch. He's saying, I don't have any info. So as far as the court can concern, however, the facts are uncontested, saying there was a PIA prepared by the OPM and Greg Hogan, the new CIO, reviewed it. So that happened. Nobody disagrees. So 3 days after the Trump's transition, OPM issued a statement indicating we're testing a new capability. We're going to be bombarding you folks with emails from hr@opm.gov. Went out right away. Since then, OPM has sent several messages to large swaths of the executive workforce and perhaps inadvertently to a host of others, including apparently members of the federal judiciary. Clarence Thomas is like, I don't find this very amusing. Government contractors, state employees with a .gov email address, and many others got these emails. OPM launched this effort without conducting a PIA in advance. And like, oh crap, we got to do a study? All right, let's do it. So then 2 federal employees initiated this action, saying OPM was acting in violation of the law. You can't do that. The emergency relief that they sought was an order barring OPM or any computer from using hr@opm.gov. You can't use that email. OPM responded the following day. They said, oh, you want a little PIA assessment? Well, here it is, attached, February 5th, 2025. Here's your crap study. ChatGPT, give them an impact study. Here you go. Here it is. You're getting emails from us, and you better respond or you're fired. The court held a hearing on the motion on February 6th, denied the motion as moot. They said, make him do a study. It's done. It's here. Here's your study. As the court explained, because the OPM had conducted the impact analysis, the relief that they sought was no longer meaningful. You wanted a study, they gave it to you. Here it is. There was no reason for the court to issue an order barring them from using the system because they already did what they were required to do. Like, you sued and they changed it. Nor was the court persuaded by the Jane Does or their lawyers at the hearing. Oh, blown out. In particular, the Jane Doe's lawyers argued that the PIA was inadequate. It's like, it's not good enough. These slides aren't even colorful. They didn't even put in here. And the court said, well, neither your complaint nor your motion challenged the adequacy of this. Okay. So you didn't even complain about that. And by the way, the court said, I doubt that both of you federal employees who are currently working there, they're like, you're literally working there and you're suing the government to not send you emails? Like, what a great employee this person is. Incredible. You can't send me emails saying, I don't even think you can sue, given Section 208 is focused on the general public, so it doesn't even apply to you. On February 7th, then, they amended their complaint. They made 2 changes. They're like, oh, crap, so our first complaint was terrible, so let's go back and do a second draft. First, they added 5 new plaintiffs, each of whom has a .gov email address. So not official government workers, but contractors. So they went out, they're like, oh crap, who else can we go find here who we can add to this thing to make our crap case better, but none of whom work in the executive branch of the United States government. Then they added another claim. They challenged the adequacy of the PIA. They're like, well, your slides are bad, so do it again. Then the same day, they expanded the group of plaintiffs and filed another TRO, bunch of babies. Then the OPM responded, Trump, opposing that motion and saying, Your Honor, this is ridiculous. We moved to dismiss the whole complaint, lack of jurisdiction. They haven't even stated a claim here. They filed a reply now saying the Jane Does have failed to offer any evidence. All they've come into court with is with their news stories and a podcast. And in support of their motion, and instead suggested incorrectly that the court should simply treat their as of yet uncontroverted allegations as true. That judge just wrecked this attorney. Wow. Podcast and your little news clippings. Great job. Says, all right, a TRO look is an extraordinary form of relief. You can't come in here with Jon Stewart clips, all right, which a court should grant under only extraordinary circumstances. Although considered on an abbreviated schedule and without the benefit of the record, the same factors here apply. We are trying to maintain the status quo. And so we begin our inquiry here with these 2 requirements. Do you even have standing to be here? To sue this? Sue on this? Telling us that there are various factors to consider. Here, these Jane Does are suing because they say that they had 2 injuries because they got emails. First, they're suffering an ongoing injury simply because their information is being stored in an insecure system. Okay. OPM now has their email address and can send them emails. So that email address is in an insecure system. Warrants suing over that. Amazing employees and contractors. And second, very grateful people. And second, that their information is more vulnerable to hacking because it's in a system that's vulnerable to hacking. So obviously both of these things are speculative, and we would reject the premise. Like, why is the OPM system insecure? Where does that come from? You have any evidence of that? Why is your email in their system bad? Because they have a lot of other info. So where's your evidence of that? And if it's vulnerable to hacking in one data system, why is it more vulnerable in another government data system? Shouldn't they all be kind of all standardized across the board? Yeah, obviously. Judge says, you have failed to carry your burden with respect to establishing that you have a substantial likelihood of even standing. Like, we don't even think you can be here based on either injury, let alone those injuries that are great enough to warrant injunctive relief. So you need a certain level of injury to get into court, and you need another level of injury, imminent, irreparable injury, to get a TRO, which would be to stop immediately whatever is happening. You have not met the TRO standard, and you haven't even met the standing standard. So this is bad. So to establish standing, you must show that there was an injury, there was causation, and that this could be redressable. Here, OPM focuses on plaintiff's failure at the first step in this inquiry, that they have failed to identify an injury in fact. They haven't proven anything is even concrete or particularized. Nothing is actual or imminent. Now it says, Judge writes, it bears emphasis, moreover, that somebody suing cannot establish standing merely by saying the government has failed to follow a required procedure. The government didn't do that thing. For example, failing to conduct a PIA, because bare procedural violations that are divorced from any concrete harm are not actual injuries in fact, right? Otherwise, and this is kind of a public policy decision that came from the Supreme Court in 2016, the idea being, if the government didn't follow a procedure, it might be wrong, but it has to be wrong such that it created a harm. And to whom was that harm created? That person may have some standing to go after the government for not following the procedure that caused the harm. But if it's just like the government didn't do a thing because they didn't, and there's no real harm to that, you don't have the right to sue, because you could imagine if you did, everybody would be suing the government for every procedural violation. So we tie it to actual injury in fact. Something happened. Now, in its opposition brief, the judge tells us, OPM identified an alternative potential source of injury to the plaintiffs, which is informational injury. Educated them. Says, you could have informational injury, but even if they claim that, that standard is also not satisfied here. But those lawyers didn't even talk about that theory of standing. And when asked about oral argument to identify every possible injury they rely upon, they said nothing about informational standing at all. Yikes. All right. So the DOJ was pre-butting an argument that they weren't even making. They're like, Judge, they have no standing. They don't even have informational standing. They didn't talk about it because they don't know anything about that, but they don't have it. The judge is sitting there in the oral arguments. Is there anything else? Any other theories of standing you have for us? Anything? She's like, no, I think we got it. Judge is like, are you sure? No, yeah, that's all. No, nothing further. Gosh. So then he put it in the opinion. Now, as the Supreme Court has explained, not every statutory violation results in the type of injury that supports standing. It requires concrete injury. So we got to ask ourselves that question in this case. Was there injury here? We're trying to draw an analogy with OFAC alerts and others. It says, in another case, there was an erroneous OFAC alert that went out, and that was not a concrete injury because it's not tied to common law. Like getting an alert is not an injury. The mere existence of an incorrect alert in a credit file, even a credit file alert, even if it's a violation of federal law, was also not insufficient to confer article standing when suing the government. So here, neither of the injuries that these Jane Does are asserting have identified are sufficient for standing at all. Their first injury, the mere fact that their .gov email addresses are being stored on an allegedly unsecured system, cannot survive precedent. And even assuming that their .gov email addresses are being held on unsecured systems, that injury is no more concrete than the alleged injury of those members of TransUnion, in another case, who complained about the erroneous alerts. So there's really no analog in the common law that allows us to make that claim here. So what they do is they make a policy argument. It's unmoored to Article 3. They're saying, well, forget about standing. They say, Your Honor, if standing is not available here, the only way that any court could ever stop any agency from operating an insecure system to prevent it from being hacked would be if it had already been hacked, at which point an injunction would be pointless. She's like, well, we can only make an order after it's hacked, Judge? That doesn't make any sense. But he says, but it's not the job of the federal courts to police the security of information in the executive branch. Just like it's not the job of the federal courts to police the internal notations on the credit report. It's not our job. That's their job. Now, your second theory of standing, which posits that OPM computers are connected to GWES, that they could be hacking, it's not any better. Although an actual hacking incident or an imminent hack might suffice, like if you are hacked or if something is about to be hacked, come back. But it requires way more than the theory of some future harm. Theory of future injury. It must be impending, must be non-speculative. Here, at least on the record, the Jane Does have failed to carry their burden of demonstrating that the .gov email addresses are at imminent risk of exposure at all, much less that the risk is inadequate. Rather, their arguments are relying on a highly attenuated chain of possibilities, saying much of their argument is based on an earlier hack of OPM databases, which occurred a decade ago. But the past is not always prologue, particularly when it comes to Article 3. Here, what you want is prospective injunctive relief. You don't want this to happen now, but it's a future injury. You must do more than point to a decade-old failure now. You must show that the OPM computer systems are at imminent risk of a cyber attack, or that this would be mitigated if they did a new PIA. You haven't shown any of that. As evidence that a hack is supposedly imminent, plaintiffs point to a podcast on which an anonymous, quote, systems security expert discusses potential vulnerabilities. It's over at Mueller, She Wrote. Oh, gosh. Although that podcast raises questions about the judge listened to the podcast. Like, I wonder what this is. Access to February 1st. Says, although it raises questions about the process by which GWES servers were set up, it does not provide any specific information that would allow us to conclude there's an imminent risk. To the contrary, the anonymous expert mostly addresses a past vulnerability that was fixed. He explains on the podcast, judge listened to the whole thing, that when the GWES was set up, hundreds of host names that, quote, appeared to be linked to internal systems, which included systems with names that indicated they were admin or portals, were made accessible from the internet. Sheesh. They opened up the ports, but those host names were later redacted, no longer visible on the public domain. The fact those systems were more visible than they should have been for some period of time after it was set up does not support your assertion that something bad is going to happen now. Although the anonymous expert also stated that the servers were possibly set up in ways that were not, quote, within the standard that you would consider an internal system to be held to, he also indicated the system was protected in other ways, such as by using a web application firewall from Akami that provides some degree of protection. The evidence also provided by the podcast is therefore mixed at best. Even your podcast is crap. More is required to satisfy Article 3. More is required to demonstrate that they need an injunction. The information that they've offered here about their emails does not satisfy the burden of showing that they face a concrete and impending risk, that their government email address is going to be misappropriated. This is not to say that they couldn't establish standing later, but they haven't done so yet. This court accordingly concludes that the Jane Does lose. Their TRO fails because they have not shown they've got any standing to sue. And although this court doesn't need to reach this issue, we also conclude that this fails for a second reason. They fail to carry their burden that they're going to suffer irreparable injury. There's a high standard for this. Injury must be irrecoverable. Here, it goes without saying. The mere fact that a .gov email address is stored in an allegedly unsecure system does not, standing alone, even if they had standing, that's not an irreparable injury. Nor can the court conclude that the risk of some future harm due to a potential hack is either certain or great. So for the reasons above, these Jane Does have failed to demonstrate that there is a significant risk that their email is going to be stolen or disclosed in the next 14 days, or that there's a risk of inadequacies. And of course, Elon just emailed them. So now they're saying, see, Judge, we just got injured again. In assessing irreparable injury, the court must also conclude the nature of the potential injury. That matters because this is not a case in which they seek to protect highly sensitive personal information. They seek to protect their work email address. The court does not doubt that government employees at times have a privacy interest in their work emails, which identify their names and stuff. But in some cases, revealing that information could result in harassment or unwanted attention, maybe. They don't want attention, which is why they're filing under pseudonym. But here, the 7 named plaintiffs have failed to offer any evidence that even if a massive hack were to occur, the disclosure of their email addresses, along with millions of others, would subject them to great personal harassment themselves. Much less that it would be certain or great. So like if there's a hack, like what makes you guys so special? Who cares? Were this a case brought under FOIA, the court might conclude the agency is entitled to withhold email because it might constitute an invasion of privacy. But this is not FOIA. And the requirement for issuance of a TRO is far more demanding. So this court accordingly concludes, you have failed to carry your burden demonstrating that there's going to be any irreparable injury at all, and we're not going to stop the OPM from sending emails out. So for the foregoing reasons, your motion for a TRO is hereby Denied. Signed by Judge Randolph Moss, district judge out of the D.C. court. And saying in his final footnote, at oral argument, the Jane Doe's lawyers indicated that one of the plaintiffs works for FEMA. And he argued that associating her with FEMA could invite harassment. You see how pathetic these people are? It's pathetic. Well, they'll know that her name is Jane Chrysalot at FEMA.gov. So Jane Chrysalot at FEMA.gov. Oh, Jane Chrysalot, saw your email. You work for FEMA? Oh, we hate you because you're terrible. Or something like that's what it is. Because FEMA does such a terrible job or whatever. But that argument raised by counsel without any evidentiary support is insufficient to justify a TRO because some woman is freaked out that she works for a crap agency and people are mad at FEMA because they've abandoned our citizens in many ways. She can't even stand behind it. This civil servant can't stand behind her name and her agency. That's pathetic. And in any event, the argument fails to address the more fundamental problem. They have failed to offer evidence sufficient to permit this court. Nothing's bad is going to happen in the next 14 days. So Elon sent the email, and now this lawyer, who apparently listens to horrible podcasts, Kelly B. McClanahan out in D.C., sent this in saying, Your Honor, we're now filing for sanctions. They sent another email, and they should be penalized accordingly. So that is happening. We'll keep our eye on that. Meanwhile, we've got guys like Tim Burchett. Mario Nafal clipped this one for us over on X. You can see Tim Burchett got asked about these cuts and these firings and these emails and all these massive changes, and he's on board.
What's your reaction to challenging federal employees on their accomplishments and how that's now being asked to thousands, tens of thousands of people across the country through social media?
I think it's a great idea. You do it in private business all the time. You have to have accountability. You have to show your work. You have to show what you've done. And now we're saying the federal government should do the same. And some folks are upset about it. Obviously, they're upset because they can't show what they've done because they probably haven't done much. They're mad because they have to go back to work. I've been contacted by people that are very upset that they have to go back to work because they've moved. They don't even live in the area anymore, but they thought they could work from home. And, you know, the post-COVID days are over. We need to get people back to work. We need to show what they're doing, and we need to show the efficiencies of government, which have not been done in quite some time.
What's your reaction to?
And there's many people asking about other jobs, multiple jobs, looking at salaries and tax filings and wondering how people who have full-time jobs with the government are making all that money. Where's it coming from? And now they're starting to get handles on exactly what is happening. Now, President Trump was asked about Elon's email when he was sitting down with the president of France, Emmanuel Macron. And here is what President Trump had to say about these recent developments.
Sir, do you think that Doge could benefit from more streamlined communications? There was that email telling employees to give 5 things that they've done last week. Agency heads then told people to ignore it, but Elon Musk...
about the last email that was sent where he wanted to know what you did this week. You know why he wanted that, by the way? I thought it was great. Because we have people that don't show up to work and nobody even knows if they work for the government. So by asking the question, tell us what you did this week, what he's doing is saying, are you actually working? And then if you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired, because a lot of people are not answering because they don't even exist. They're trying to find, that's how badly various parts of our government were run by, and especially by this last group. So what they're doing is they're trying to find out who's working for the government. Are we paying other people that aren't working? And, you know, where's all that? Where's the money going?
Yeah, have you even logged into your email? Like, are you even checking it? Are you online, bureaucrats? So Trump, looking forward to getting some answers, thought it was a great idea from Elon, and so do we. All right, so we've got good updates there with Elon and Doge, but we've also got trans prisoners that we have to talk about here today. And here's another one. Yeah. The trans prisoners strike back. Trump ordered them back to their original housing locations. They sued, and now they're going to get to stay in the trans facilities, whatever that means. So let's go through this one that came out of the District of Columbia. The judge who has now granted this position is, as we have seen before here out of this court, Royce C. Lamberth, who was a terrible judge back during the January 6 cases. This is out of the District of Columbia. The case is, of course, Jane Doe versus Pamela Bondi, and we're talking about trans plaintiffs, Jane, Mary, and Sarah Doe. Those are not their real names. You can substitute real names for them. Those are hard to remember, so I think what we'll do is use Larry, Moe, and Curly. I think that's a good replacement for those. Those are much easier to remember. Larry, Moe, and Curly will be the subject of this complaint and lawsuit. But you can see, here was what the original lawsuit was about. They sent this in. They says, Jane Doe sued Pamela Bondi, and they said, you can't transfer these people because they're trans. So transfer, transgender, it's a lot of this word today. But they're all suing. Larry, Moe, and Curly and the rest of them, Emily, Zoe, Tori, Olivia, all of them, gosh, all trans women, so-called, incarcerated in the Bureau of Prisons facilities. Trump's executive order came out, 14168, and it directed the Bureau of Prisons to cut off medically necessary health care for plaintiffs for their gender dysphoria and to transfer them back to men's prisons, going home. Now, this court entered a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction to prevent them while this case proceeds from being transferred back. Now, on February 20th and 21st, days after the court's order, the additional plaintiffs and other trans at the facilities who were not previously named were rounded up. And they were informed they're going back to the regular prison. So the original order came down, but it only came down for Larry, Moe, and Curly, for those three. So the Bureau of Prisons said, oh, well, Larry, Moe, and Curly, you're staying here. Everyone else, Chad, John, Mark, you're all pack your bags. You're going back home. So then these plaintiffs, Emily, Zoe, Tori, the rest of them, like, huh? We have to go? So they sue. Now they're seeking the same relief. Each of these plaintiffs is similarly situated to Larry, Moe, and Curly, and they want to be included too. And saying this is an Eighth Amendment claim. It's going to be cruel and unusual to, send them back to the original location. All of the newly added plaintiffs have confirmed diagnoses and they've transitioned and they're on hormones and they've had many surgeries and more. All of them face serious, immediate, and irreparable harm if they're transferred or if their vital medical care is stopped. So is this a thing, like if you're a trans, like this vital, like what is that? That's a lifetime of hormones, probably? So like if you get off of that, your transition reverses, and that's serious condition. That's like the irreparable harm that they're identifying. It must be that. So plaintiffs therefore seek immediate and preliminary relief. Here's the statement of facts. It says plaintiffs are all housed in women's facilities. So they use that word. Now, each of the plaintiffs has been housed in a women's facility for months or years. While housed in women's facilities, plaintiffs, there it is, have received hormone medications necessary to ensure their health and safety, most of them for over a decade, right? So that's now part of the payroll, whatever that costs, which I'm sure is insane. Plaintiffs have also been diagnosed with gender dysphoria, have maintained medically necessary hormone treatment for years. Many have had surgeries, all had their medical care overseen by BOP doctors. Plaintiffs who have had genital surgery no longer produce hormones, which means they need to take the hormone medication to maintain their health and well-being. Transferring them to men's facilities will place them in immediate physical and psychological danger. Says these trans housed in men's prisons face high levels of violence and sexual assault, pervasive sexual harassment. Many of them have been attacked and more, which is probably true. Says Trump issued order in relevant part. It bars them from going to women's prisons, mandating their transfer to men's facilities, regardless of individual safety considerations. Well, I don't know if that's exactly right. I think they can keep them safe in the correct facilities. What does this say for the safety of the women in the women's facilities? What do you think about that? And prohibits Bureau of Prisons from providing any medical procedure, treatment, or drug for the purpose of conforming an inmate's appearance to the opposite sex. Right? So Trump's EO cut all of it off. On January 24th, then, BOP officials removed the trans from the general population of their women's facilities, put them into segregated units, said, you're going to men's facilities. Trump ordered it. So then Larry, Moe, and Curley sued to stop the transfer. The court stopped their transfer. Then they got everyone else, like everyone else, you're going. Now we seek to expand the coverage to include them as well. And of course, the rest of this we know. The judge ultimately came down and granted this. Here is what the judge wrote. Said, all right, on February 18th, this court entered a preliminary order on Eighth Amendment grounds. Said it would be cruel and unusual if Larry, Moe, and Curley go over to a new facility. On February 21st, they filed an amended complaint. They added 9 more, all of whom are trans, incarcerated in women's facilities. They want the same thing as the 3. That same day, there was another TRO to stop them from being moved. The plaintiffs emphasized the urgency because they were rounded up. They were immediately transferred to men's prisons, like they get in a van and they're like going 90 over there. This is where you are. Saying that they would have their health care terminated pursuant to the executive order versus paying for it forever. The court has reviewed the parties' filings and determines that the same reasoning from the court's order still applies. Nothing in the record to compel a different outcome. At the outset, the court sees no change in its conclusions, and the reasons for doing so are unavailing, saying the only new development here is the government has identified low security men's facilities where they can put these people, which according to the government completely alleviates the Eighth Amendment harms. They're not going to get abused. They're not going to get beaten. Nothing's going to happen. They're going to be fine. They're going to a different location. The plaintiffs urged the court to strike the declaration or afford it little weight, saying they're not going to be harmed at all. There was a declaration of somebody who says, yeah, it's going to be great. They're going to be fine. But even considering the Stover declaration, the court finds that they are still likely to win. It is still going to be cruel and unusual. As this court concluded originally, this declaration from Stover indicates that housing reassessments are conducted to identify men's facilities where to put these people, but the government's filings also make clear that the only change in circumstances from when the initial housing originally is now Trump's order. So the only thing that changed when the initial housing determination was made for each plaintiff, each trans, the BOP determined that considering all statutory and constitutional factors, a women's facility was appropriate for each of the T's. This was the conclusion even in a landscape where 99% of T's in BOP custody are housed in men's facilities. Even in a landscape where 99% of T women are housed in men's facilities. What? Summarily removing the possibility of housing the T's in a women's facility when that was determined to be the appropriate facility under the existing regime, shows they'll win on the Eighth Amendment claim. We still take no position on the other claims. Therefore, it is our position that the TRO is granted. So the rest of the T's, Larry, Moe, and Curley's friends, all get to go and join in on the fun in the women's prisons. The court is also unconvinced. Trump's administration gave statistics showing that a low security men's facility would be safer for them. The government statistics do not disaggregate assaults against T inmates from overall rates of assault. In any event, the proffered statistics are still consistent with the numerous government reports and regulations recognizing that T's are significantly at elevated risks of violence when they're at a facility corresponding to their biological sex, right? And that's, I guess the judge probably referenced that from some article written by T's. And that is to say nothing of other harms. The placement in a male penitentiary by itself will exacerbate the symptoms of their gender dysphoria, even if they're not subject to physical and other violence. whether because they will be subject to searches by male correctional officers, made to shower with men, referred to as men, forced to dress as men, because they have male chromosomes, I guess, or simply because their mere homogenous presence of men will cause an uncomfortable dissonance. This is like, we're living in a friggin' bizarro world. Well, like these men who are women, allegedly, are going to be uncomfortable being around other men because they think they're women. And the judge is very concerned about that, doesn't want to exacerbate their very real gender dysphoria. Now, Royce Lamber says, there you go. It's now ordered that everything is existing as it existed before Trump took office. So all of Trump's executive orders on this issue now mooted. So Royce C. Lamberth going to keep the T's in the women's prisons and call that a major victory. Now, we'll see how well that goes. We saw Trump went after the Maine governor for keeping T's in women's sports and allowing that to move on. Trump was asked about his approval ratings and how Americans are liking these changes. Here's what President Trump said.
The Harvard poll that came out had you up 9+ points, and all of your agenda that you ran on, you're accomplishing that. You got the support of the American people, including stopping the war in Ukraine. If you can comment on the latest Harvard poll, I'd appreciate that.
Well, I was honored by it. It was a big poll, and it's usually a poll that leans on the other side of things, the other side of the world, so to speak. But the Harvard poll is a respected poll, and it has us not only leading, but leading by a lot, and leading on every single issue that we've talked about. And as I said, we've become the party of common sense. And I think that's a very important element now, common sense, because what's happening in the world and even in this country, some of the things that took place, many of them are now canceled, and the rest are being canceled as we speak. But we've moved very rapidly and I think very effectively. So I was honored by that poll. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Nice polls indeed. And you're going to see a lot of back and forth on this. A lot of people on the blue team constantly saying Trump's polls are crashing and this is all going to be over in 30 days. Everything's collapsing. Don't buy it for a second. They're just coping right now. Here was more from Trump on that.
The radical left or whoever it may be starts screaming about the Constitution, but it has nothing to do with the Constitution. It has to do with fairness to this country. It has to do with being ripped off. And when you read the things that all of these billions, and I mean many billions, hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent on, that's all you have to do is stand up here and read them. I could stand up all day and read the kind of things where we're spending all of this money. The good news is that when you think of how rich a nation we can be when we get rid of this, sometimes you'll buy a company and you'll see it was really well run. They accounted for every penny. Well, not much you can do there. You got yourself a bad deal. This one is the exact opposite. Tremendous fraud, tremendous waste. And when you think of what it is, Elon uses an expression, caring. If we had people that just cared a little bit when they did contracts, when they negotiated with outside vendors on behalf of the United States, that's what I'm doing now. I'm negotiating for the people of the United States. So we're doing a great job of it. I will say we found it'll be hundreds of billions of dollars of waste and fraud and abuse.
And big changes are going to continue to come. We're excited for them. Trump, Elon, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, all coming in. We're going to be here covering it all. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, my friends. Well, if you're just joining us, we covered 3 good stories today. We had 3 pretty interesting legal updates. One was about Elon's email, and they're suing to stop the emails from continuing to occur. You can see the unions went absolutely nuts and said Elon is a sophomoric hack who is bullying the hardworking federal employees and creating confusion. They demand that the HR@opm.gov account cease and desist any requests for accountability. And we read through the filing there. They amended their complaint. This one came out in conjunction with Norm Eisen, as we referenced here at the beginning. There he is, another one from Norm flying in. Then we had another series of filings coming in from the office handling the Jane Doe's case, nationalsecuritylaw.org, Kelly B. McClanahan. now wants sanctions brought against the OPM, Trump's administration, saying that they violated something. We don't know exactly what it was, but during a presentation, saying that some emails were deleted, and then I'm guessing somebody got Elon's email, and now they're upset about a false claim that was presented to the court. So she sounds kind of like a hysterical person, which is why she's asking for sanctions now, even though the judge obliterated her in this prior ruling where he said, you have no standing to be here, you have no injury, you're a little whining about your email accounts being stored in some server or not even based on any facts or evidence. You submitted a podcast here and some news clippings. Thanks, but no thanks. You are now denied. So we read through that. It was a good one. We then talked about the trans case, the T's, who are going to be still hanging out with the W's, the women's, in the women's prison. And we'll see what the Trump administration does on that one. I don't know how high of a priority this is relative to some of the other filings, but we'll see what they say about it. But now, my friends, it's time to hear from you. And I hope that your Monday has been outstanding and amazing and you accomplished way more than you even thought possible. But let's see who's joining us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sending in these donos. Thanks for becoming membos. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for inviting somebody to come over and join us when we go live. It's better when we do it together. Have them come on over. Let's have some fun. Let's see who's here. And I want to thank our friends for clipping for us. We got John and Donut in the house. We got some puppies coming up too. Hey, what's up? Hey, here's a good way to start it out. It's Dan Bongino in the house saying cutesy time is now over. So get ready for it, libs. John Lynn, what's up? If you received a call from the president and he asked you to become a deputy director of the FBI, would you choose your country or would you choose your membos? Oh no, it's a very controversial take. I have to pick one or the other. I would serve our membos by serving our country. How about that? And we do live streams from inside the J. Edgar Hoover building. So our membos would get really nice behind the scenes. It'd be great. So we'd serve both, John Lynn. Thank you for that one. We got Knox is here. And thanks for being a membo for so long. 13 months as a membo, a baker's dozen of months. Thank you for that. Hey, Knox says, happy Monday, all. So happy for the Bongino nomination. But what will I listen to after Rob's show ends? I know. Like what's Dan, Dan is an icon and he holds the tension in many ways right there every day. So it's like, what happens when that goes away? And it's not good. Like we remember when Bannon left for 3 months. Felt a little empty out there. So yeah, we're really grateful to Dan for making that decision. It's going to be awesome to see him do that for the country. But his audience is going to be like, what are we going to do now? Maybe he'll continue on in some shape or form, but obviously, it would have to change a lot. Hey, DeHook says, any update on Letitia James's case? I remember the appeals court judge not buying it. I haven't seen anything come out on it yet. No. In other words, we haven't gotten a ruling yet from the Court of Appeals, as far as I know. The prosecutor's begging not to be sanctioned, but haven't heard anything since. It's been a few months. I think we're still waiting. For the Court of Appeals to rule. Tobo says, I think we can trust that there will be serious consequences if any agents lie to get FISA surveillance on an American citizen. Dan knows how to convey his disgust with such acts. Yeah, now I think, but historically that has not been the case. I mean, they've gotten many, many FISA warrants without any consequences at all. Sharpie Guy, what's up, says, Bongino delivered a heartfelt explanation on the interweb. I got to listen to it today. He's an amazing person, in my opinion, and will deliver his integrity to all of us 10 times over. Yeah, and that's what I really like about this happening. It's like Dan, the people in these positions are accountable to people. Like they have reputations that matter, they care about. To the rest of America, not just to their inner circle. Christopher Wray cared about his reputation to the institution of the FBI and to the Washington elite. He didn't care what you or I thought about him at all. He didn't care what Chuck Grassley thought about him at all. His reputation was serving himself, serving his institution, and serving his DC masters. That's all. Bongino has an audience, right? Bongino has a community, got a movement, got a bunch of people that he's connected with at a deeper level who rely on him to be honest and act with integrity and do the things that he's been doing. So he has to act in conformity with that. He has to act consistently with that, right? But I don't envision Bongino going to the FBI and becoming a piece of crap, because he's already anchored that in. He's got proof of work that backs him up for all of his years and all of his prior work, and now he's going into that position. That is a stark contrast to somebody else who's just promoted from within the institution to continue to serve the institution. They're only accountable to themselves, and they review themselves, and they all smoke their own smells. So there is no actual accountability there. He's accountable to the people in a way that even politicians are not, right? I don't even think this about politicians. Politicians are accountable to their big money interest, to the donors, to the people who drive out the votes, to the unions, right? To all the political entities. It's very different, I think, than other people who go directly to the people, right? Trump is somebody who also went directly to the people, bypassed everybody else. And look how that works. He's accountable to us, we the people. Bongino follows that same mold. So did most others, by the way, right? RFK Jr. is the same mold. Tulsi Gabbard's the same mold. Pick them. Kash Patel, all of them following the same pattern. It's an accountability to the public at large rather than to the institutions that the other leaders were beholden to. Like, think about like Miguel Cardona, okay, from Department of Education under Biden. Like what? Nobody cares. He's not accountable to anybody other than the bureaucracy. So that's why he'll never have a position of greatness, because he's just beholden to something that's not great. Thank you, Sharpie Guy, for that. Sheila Poo. It would take less than 5 minutes to say 5 things I did last week. Heck, my staff have productivity metrics they have to meet each day. That's why it's called work. Yeah, and there are many ways to do this, right? Basically, every single business book is like, pick your number, like the one thing. Pick your one number every day. Or you pick your scorecard. What are 3 metrics that you're going to track every day? What's your big, hairy, audacious goal? What are your big rocks? Like, it's not a complicated thing. They just don't want to be held accountable to it. That's why they're pitching a fit over it. They're even suing to stop it. Knox says, I've been mistress of my own destiny for 20 years, but must still bill down to 0.1 hour. With client name and duties, I cannot just write discovery review 40 hours. Yeah. Yeah, so Knox is saying, look, I control my own law. I control my own practice. Like, I'm my own lawyer. Nobody tells me what to do. Or maybe not. Maybe you're not. You're saying you have a contract and this is what you're required to do. Yeah, so either way, doesn't matter either way. It's good practice either way to write what you actually do. Okay, what Knox is contrasting this nicely with what we saw from Nathan Wade in the Fani Willis saga. Remember his billing records? I was explaining an accounting earlier this morning on the Membo stream and talking about how annoying it is to have to go through and write 50 pages of everything you did on a case and break it down in tenths of an hour, right? Go through, 1.5, 0.3, 0.7, and just do the whole thing for every single thing you did. It's a nightmare. But it's very important to do that and to keep notes on everything so that when you have to do an Did we just crash out? Let's see. Are we still live? I don't know what happened there. Are we back? Hopefully we're back. All right, so we're back. All right, good. We're back. Thank you for that. Are there federal agents around here? Where's the FBI? They following us here? So the point is, you want to have good notes. You cannot just, Nathan Wade and Fani Willis, they just can't, he's just like, we did discovery review, 40 hours, billed whatever that number was, like thousands of dollars. You have to articulate what you did. What did you do? Reviewed body camera footage, disc 1, 2, and 3. Reviewed body camera footage these days. Read through police report via sergeant, whatever. Here are my notes and conclusions. Sharpie Guy is here, says, here is our quality control manager enjoying the sun and vitamin D after a needed grooming today. It's no wonder why we get 5-star reviews one after one in San Antonio because of this real good boy right here. Quality control manager after a much needed grooming. Is it a real good boy? I think it's a real good boy. Real good boy in San Antonio from Sharpie Guy. Yeah. Sharpening man in Texas. Glocky says federal judge tells the AP to get bent over press access. Federal judge declines to temporarily restore AP's full access to the White House. They sued over that? Big babies. AP. Maybe if they recognize the Gulf of America, this wouldn't be so complicated. It's very easy. Just change one word. It's not complicated, AP. They'll let you back in no time. Just do it. Hey, what's up? Glocky shared this one. The Elon, the Doge alt. Yeah, that's a nice challenge coin. FAFO. Might want to get one of those. Glocky shared this one. Government employees trying to write one paragraph on what they did last week. Oh, no. Super stressful. Yeah, it's a hard day. It's hard for them. What do we do? Here's another one from Glocky. Yeah, this was a good one. We saw this one this morning. Here's what we got done last week. Cried about Trump, cried about Elon, made it into the office for once, barely. Read some emails, cried about Trump and Elon some more because they were out protesting in the gutters of Washington, D.C. Glocky says, diversity educators are starving in the streets and you're laughing. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Chubby says, so if they're going to keep declaring themselves as, quote, civic servants, then Trump should sign an EO declaring civic servants to be anyone performing a civic duty, and such is an unpaid position like jury duty is. Although they may pay you for jury duty, but I understand your point. Yeah, depending on how long the trial goes and so on. But yeah, I get your point. Yeah, they should just be, civic servants serve. They do something useful. We pay them. So are they employees or are they serving out of the graciousness of their hearts? They're employees. Thank you for that, Chubby. Hey, Double Yo 7 Woodworking. What's up? Thank you for becoming a member, Double Yo 7 Woodworking. We'll see you tomorrow morning on the Membos Only stream. Here's one from Glocky. It's Michael Scott. He says, federal workers, they say, I am the victim of a hate crime. Stanley says, asking what you do at work is a hate crime. Michael Scott says, well, I hate it. Here's Glocky. Here's a government employee. He writes, what do I do at work? He's pondering just for days. What do I do at work? I don't even know. Who am I? What's my purpose here? Hopefully he gets answers. Glocky shared this one. Yeah, I know this happens a lot. I was jumped by two guys in Tesla hats. They said, this is Doge country. Hey, what's going on, Glocky? Says, I can't stand vote vets, okay? They are literally a Democrat front group. I mean, look who is their poster boy. Oh, it's Pete Booty. There you go. Yeah, vote vets. There you go. It's Pete Booty. See, that's my point. You don't even have to check the groups. I never even looked up vote vets. Don't know anything about them. I like veterans. I would guess I don't like vote vets. I like voting and I like veterans, but do I like vote vets? No. Why? Because they call themselves vote vets. And they sue and they smear the name in everybody's face. Oh, you hate voting and you hate veterans, don't you, Rob? No, I don't. Well, then why don't you support us at votevets.org? Because you're scammers, in my opinion. Tony Hay Muckets is bringing in 5 new membos. Thank you, Tony Hay. Christy OG, Red Torch, John Henry, SAF Fruit Loop, and Patriot X Pants in the house. Brought in here courtesy of Tony Hay Muckets in the house. Thank you, Tony Hay. Hey, Schlista says, if you really want to get mad, look up who pays the union reps and who pays their retirement benefits. They do zero government work and only serve as a representative for the workers that join the union, yet they are still considered GS employees. Wow. Yeah, so in other words, they're grifting on both ends. They grift from the government, they grift from the unions. Great. Thank you, Schlista. That doesn't surprise me. Chat with me says, keeping someone for performance reasons based on that lawsuit would keep someone who can only send telegraph messages when we function in a world of internet in AI. I see what you're saying. Yeah, so like you'll be like a real badass if you can be kept around for performance when the supercomputers take over the systems. Knox is here, says there is no revolving door, was linking us to this article, said Patrizia Cavazzoni, Former head of the FDA Drug Center joins Pfizer as the chief medical officer. Isn't that incredible? What a nice payday for her. Thank you, Knox. Chubby says, here's a simple Google that should negate all these whiny lawsuits. Is Washington, D.C. an at-will employment state? Yeah, Washington, D.C. is an at-will employment state, which means that either the employer or the employee can terminate the relationship anytime. This is true unless there's a written contract or states otherwise. Glocky also shared this, says, do the math on this. This is just the fraud they made public and actually found. Even then, it's staggering. Wait until the government credit cards get audited too. Talking about VA scandals, treatment, financial mismanagement, $250,000 here, $10 million there, and so on. Thank you, Glocky. Hopefully they root it all out and our veterans get the money they are entitled to. Michelle, our kids are 8 and 7. Every day I ask them what 3 things they learned that day when I pick them up from school. I don't understand grown adults' problem. Well, you sound like an amazing mom, and your kids sound like they're probably sharp as hell, which is awesome. And what the good news is, for young kids like this, is they're already like light years ahead of government workers. So I don't know, maybe they can be president one day, which is amazing. Or like Elon. They sound like, like Elon, like a little Elon training going on over there. But the government employees are acting like less than that, aren't they? By not even responding. Thank you for that, Michelle. What's up? Wojo says, so the people that don't want to do their job are mad at the guy, Elon, that is doing his job. Yeah. And they're so mad, in fact, they're suing because you don't appreciate what they're doing for you, which is nothing. Brian Hinkle says Dan Bongino is giving up 10 to 20 million a year, according to Grok. Yeah, it's probably more than that. Yeah. It's a big deal. But, the country it's priceless, baby. So you gotta hand it to Dan. And we talked about this morning too, Brian, if you missed it. I know you're a membo. But the left they're insane, okay? So Dan, Cash, Pam, Tulsi, RFK, all of them, they're going to come under scrutiny for the rest of their lives by maniac Democrats who are going to want to try to take them out, just like they tried to take Trump out, just like they came after Bannon and Navarro. Okay, there's always that risk. Bannon went to prison working with Trump. Navarro went to prison working with Trump. So these guys are signing up for that possibility right now. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but there's a greater risk, I think, than that. Like 10 to 20 million is a lot. 50 million a year, probably. With his sponsors and his promos and all sorts, he did a lot. Dude's everywhere and deserves every bit of it. The point is, there's another risk there. There's a life risk. There's an imprisonment risk. Like if the Democrats get control in the future, God forbid, they try to take people out. They try to lock them up forever. They tried to lock Trump up forever. So there's also that component to it, right? It's a real thing that's happening. So I want to shout out, hats off to Dan. I mean, it's really everybody in the Trump administration. Pinochet's helicopter tours says democracy killed Socrates, forever proving that even the slimmest of the majority can force the minority to drink poison. These parasites should be glad we're allowing them. Okay, Pinochet. What's up, Glocky? We condone peace here. And we do not condone any political violence at all. What's up? Glocky is here. Says, watch Newsom defends spending $50 million to fight Trump while asking for $40 billion in fire relief. Yeah, I remember that conversation. Hey, Pinochet, I refuse to be lectured and finger wagged by so-called civil servants who are actively, collectively bargaining against the people they serve. Yeah, it's a real interesting predicament for them to explain logically. And we say, wait a minute, can we just can we just ask for some performance reviews? No, you're sued. Well, we're going to send you an email. No, you can't do that. You're sued. Well, we're just going to reduce your funding or fire this, or no, you're sued. You have to serve us. I thought you served us to work for us. Don't you care about the longevity of the country? I thought you worked for the country. Don't you care about America? Well, America's going broke. We can't afford it. Well, you're going to have to afford our attorney's fees now because I'm suing you too. Oh, thanks. Thanks, guys. And then they lecture us about how amazing and caring they are about America. Give me a break. MJ Powell said it's about money. It's about these unions getting money. They're all getting fat and rich off of it. MJ says, hey, Robert, happy Monday. Happy Monday to you, MJ. Says, hello, watchers. Go President Trump, Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi, and to all the rest in this new and effective administration. I'll take my $5,000. Thank you very much. Robert, is this my 13th or 14th month in the house? I lost track. Good question. We're going to round it up to 14, MJ. Thank you for being here for 14 amazing months. I know the Membo says 10, but sometimes cards cancel. You got to re-up and all the things. MJ, we're grateful for you. 14 months, man, as a Membo. Ma'am, as a Membo. So over it. Thank you, MJ. We got so over it. 12 months, that's 1 year. Says affirmative action was replaced by DEI, which is also racist BS. Yeah, affirmative action wasn't a good marketing brand. So DEI was better. What does affirmative action mean? I don't know. But diversity and equity, we all like inclusion, right? And then now we know what it really is. It's racism. Hey, this old guy says, the FEMA argument is pretty flimsy. Simply having a .gov email address is sufficient to elicit plenty of emails complaining about you. Yeah, that's right. It's not just about FEMA. It can be any other branch too. These people are so scared of the agencies they work for that they don't even want to be associated with their agencies. What? Thank you, this old guy. Mimi's Mimo. What's up, Mimi's Mimo? 20 months as a Membo. Thank you, Mimi, for being here for 20 full months. That's a long time. Says Rob's where you go for true timely news. Thank you so much. Mimi's Mimo. Thank you for being here, supporting us, making it possible to do that for all this time. Thank you to Mimi's Mimo in the house. Former LEO says, since the government is required to respond to these types of frivolous filings at the taxpayer expense, can the government recover the wasted expense? This appears to be the perfect class action filed by taxpayers to reimburse the government. Well, not really. So part of what we're talking about is, or a solution that has been brought up was the injunction bond, right? If they're going to ask for something, for the government to do something, then they should put up money. The government demands they should put up money before the government comes out of pocket, because that might lead to harm or damages for the government. But no, I mean, the government, this is part of what we pay for with our taxes, is a response. Knox says, it is cruel and unusual for my extremely mentally ill, very low IQ, very old, disabled, etc., to be in prison with able-bodied men. However, none of them get to go to women's prisons. That's such a good point, Knox. It's true. Yeah, it's true. They send like 70-year-old dudes to prison, right? I'm like, oh, great. So what's he going to do there? Knox, such a good point. A lot of other people go to prison with other problems, schizophrenia and other things, and they don't have leftist lawyers coming out of the woodwork to sue for them. Terry Butler, what's up? Thank you, Terry, for becoming a member. We'll see you tomorrow on the members only morning stream. Knox is here. What I cannot find is the demographics on all new hires under Biden. Under Biden's aggressive DEI hiring program, I wonder how many white men were hired or promoted. I don't think many. I think probationary employees include employees who take a different job of any kind than promotions. What worries me is 59% in one report of federal employees are registered Democrat. At every turn, they are most likely to circumvent every policy that Trump orders, which is why there's a great purge happening, I think, right now, Bonnie. It's to get that number down. They can go find jobs somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, I think part of Biden's original purge was like, if you had a religious objection to the jab, you were gone, right? So that gets rid of the religious people. If you had any objection to the jab, you were gone. They used that, right? If you had any opposition to the lockdowns, you were an extremist. And that went after certain contingents of people. So Jennifer, what's up? Patriot Party podcast, right on Rumble, happening soon after Rob for fun. So check it out. Patriot Party podcast on Rumble as soon as we're done here. Woodchip Bill says the women in these prisons should sue under Section 8 for cruel and unusual punishment for being housed with dudes. Yes. What about them? BH Williams says, I'm behind, but I do large messaging for a living. If OPM is trying to email everyone in their domain, the .gov, the collection already exists. Okay, it's called a directory. 44 U.S. Code 3501 is only for information collected from anyone other than the federal government. It lists individuals, small businesses, educations, nonprofit institutions, federal contractors, which is why they went out and gobbled up those federal contractors, state, local, tribal governments, and other persons resulting from the collection of information for the federal government. There you go. Yeah. Well, judge didn't buy their argument. and said it's not even a harm. And did they even have standing? It's all hypothetical in the first place. Even if it does exist and they have their emails, it's not a harm. Thank you for that. Great details, BH Williams. Thanks for looking it up. Hey, Sharpie Guy says, how do we get Norm Eisen's law licenses taken away and in turn file charges against them? Well, he's filing in a bunch of very friendly places. He's filed, I think, in Rhode Island. He's filed in DC. He's filed in San Francisco. So all of those places love him. He knows what he's doing. Filing in friendly jurisdictions. And unless he's committed a crime, or there's probable cause to say he's committed a crime, nobody's going to prosecute him. So what we need to continue to do is to hold him accountable, follow him what he's doing, and keep the spotlight shined brightly on his lawsuits, which is part of what we're trying to do here. Thank you for that, Sharpie Guy. Sheila Pooh bringing in 10 membos. Thank you, Sheila. Look who's here. Hippie is here. We got Robert Bendler. We got Amy D, Christopher Benedict, Spider King is joining us, Tracy Quest, Brian Penton, Wes Gibson, Orion is here, and Sherry White gifted membos courtesy of Sheila Pooh. A million hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila, for bringing in 10 new membos. We got Dan B is here. What's up, Dan B? Thank you for becoming a supporter. We'll see you tomorrow on the Membos Only stream. Oh my goodness, we have a new grandbaby here. Indoctrination is over on Locals. Just shared this one. Says, let's welcome my beautiful granddaughter to this crazy world. Nora is going to be a Skaldmir, just like her Oma. Man, that looks like some Norwegian stuff. I don't even know what that is, but that sounds awesome. She definitely is. And shout out to you, Indoctrination. Welcome aboard, Nora. It's going to be a beautiful world. We're excited to have you here. Shout out to your family there, Indoctrination. Beautiful baby. We got Glocky's here. Says the NSA is compromised. No way that China and Russia aren't blackmailing these people. Oh gosh, I saw that story. Yeah, speaking of the T's today. Apparently the NSA had like sex chat rooms in the NSA Indolink messaging program. I think I saw that come across from Rufo. Gross. Leonard, Rob, what do you think is behind the left's obsession with transsexuals? Personally, I think it is a kind of a wedge distractive type of an issue that is created to normalize or to denormalize the normal constructs of society. For example, the definition of man and woman, the relationships, the understanding amongst youth, even like what's the difference between boy and girl, man and women. It's very destabilizing on the human psyche. And I think it creates for them, for the left and for the Democrats, a whole opening of other issues. It acts as a wedge issue. It acts as an identifiable issue. So you can, it's like raising a flag. If you identify in support of this cause, you can be presumed to be a friendly on all of these other causes. And it kind of sets an outer perimeter on a lot of the gender and sex stuff, right? That kind of creates a moat against other criticisms. So I think there was a lot of political methodology behind it in order to create a constituency that was very supportive. They got a lot of money. I think it's pretty dark. I think it's a tool to reshape society, in other words. And they were using that in some sort of a mass psychosis formation event, kind of a long event, to try to reprogram society, ultimately, is what I think was behind it. And I don't think it's a natural, organic thing either, by the way. I think it was top down. And I think you can see a lot of that funding probably from our own CIA and our own USAID and our own federal government to turn it into something that it isn't, to make it a much bigger issue than it really is, and to distract many people from other issues by focusing on this issue. I think it was very useful in multiple ways. Interesting question. Hey, what's up? Rel is here. Relantel is joining us. Says Crazy Girl coming in. Thank you, Relantel. Rel in the house. We got Crazy Girls here. Stephanie S., Yorick in the house. Cindy Bowman and Jeremy Pattison joining up. Thank you, Relantel, for bringing them in as membos. We got Whoopsie Daisy. Says, can we review this one from RFK Jr.? Says 5 states suing for a lawsuit that's 10% of states. The tide is turning. When was that one? Is that a new lawsuit? Because it doesn't look like he's HHS yet. I'd be curious to see what he said. If it's new and there's something to talk about, perhaps. Richard Myers. What's up, Richard Myers? Thank you so much for this very nice donut today, Richard. And thanks for being a membo and supporting us. Rob, why say anything when those employees have no rights being probationary? I just don't understand the reasoning. Why say anything? I guess I'm asking who you're asking about saying things. Would it be the Trump DOJ? Like, why are they responding in the filings? I would say they have to respond, but actually in many of their responses, they are saying that the courts don't have jurisdiction over these things, right? That is part of the argument. It's like, Judge, you don't have a decision over this. They're probationary. We can fire them. You might disagree with our reason for firing them, but the judge can't substitute. You cannot substitute your judgment for the executive branch and say it was a bad idea to fire them, or maybe you should. Like, if you were president, Judge, maybe you would have done things differently and not fired these people because you feel bad for them or they're going to be harmed for whatever. But you're not the president. You're the judge. So you can't substitute your judgment. Was the law broken? Is there imminent irreparable harm that's coming soon? They're going to win on these things and it serves the public interest. Is it going to happen or not? And what the judge found in that case is not, right? Having your emails or being probationary, they're fighting on the probationary thing a lot. We'll see what the judge says about those. But essentially, you're right? The executive branch is saying exactly that. We have the power to do these things. You can't substitute your judgment, so you got to eat it. Hey, what's up, Sharpie guy? When are the recipes for the pastas coming? It's a great question. I got to figure that one out, Sharpie guy. Says, she's a good girl, Rob, and name besides Boss Babe is Gracie Marie. I couldn't see if I could see a little dog wee-wee in there. I couldn't tell. But it's Gracie Marie. What a beautiful pup right there. Gorgeous as can be. Gracie Marie, a.k.a. Boss Babe, in the house. Thank you for that, Sharpie guy. We got G-Men. Says, Yale Medical School released a paper saying some things. Check with the local CDC. G-Men, what's up? Hey, chat with me. How's the mind map going, Rob? It's going great. We hopefully shared the link this morning on our members only stream. Chat with me. Did you check it out? Pinochet says, if you can't spot the weakest player at the poker table, it's you. Maybe Doge should move into the turn the workforce against each other phase. Let them fight for the job. Hilarity ensues, I'll bet. Yeah, it's kind of like that scene from Batman, The Darkest Knight, where the Joker's like, you two fight it out. Whoever wins can join the team. Londo, ultimately, they're trying to turn humans into cattle because it's easy to control, quote, free slaves. Yeah, so-called free slaves. And meanwhile, we're just living in Plato's cave. We've got no idea about what's happening outside the cave. We see all these shadows on the wall. We think they're real. Little do we know, they're transgenders. Wild. Former says, if the DOJ impanels a grand jury or drops an indictment, are they mandated to file in D.C. or can they file for a more friendly court in Texas? Well, if Texas has jurisdiction over the crime, so there needs to be some physical connection to it. Like, did the crime happen in Texas? Was there some elements of the crime that occurred in Texas? Texas has to have a connection. You just can't forum shop, right? You were a former police officer, just like when you arrested somebody, you charge them in the city of the arrest. You couldn't charge them in the next city over or the next town over. So whatever the connection is to Texas. I don't see any anti-Trump defendants getting convicted in D.C. Just look at the past cases. Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, it's a liberal enclave there, so there's really no justice that can occur in that location. But those people operate in that location so that they're immune from consequences. Like, the question always comes up about Fannie or Tish or Bragg or any of them. What can be done? Nothing. They're amongst friends, which is why, I think it is important to think about location as protection in terms of red and blue, by the way. Like, if you're a red person and you're in a very blue location, like we see what happens to guys, on the subway and elsewhere. It's a bad thing. Like, so these things can matter. They can spill over. So being forum friendly, I think, is important. Former, thanks for that one. And my friends, thank you for sending in those great comments and those great donos. Very much appreciate your support. We could not do it without you. Let's say hello to our friends here on X. Then we're going to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're going to debrief, and we're going to see what else is going on over there. Of course, we'd love it if you became a member. We have great members-only streams in the morning. We had a great stream this morning. Hey, Fred is here. says, I had a job with a high security clearance, pretty high, making something for the U.S. military. I was in the IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. You had to pay dues. They did absolutely nothing for me because you had to pay. Yeah. It's just a giant grift. What's up? B. Torn is over there. Mini Tika, great to see you. Hey, Rella Bella, great to see you. Says, thank you, Rob, again for the great breakdown of legal stupidity. Thank you, Rella. Sergeant says, I don't know if you've explored this or not, Rob, but Grok can make mind maps. No more wasting hours creating visuals of studying. Yeah, that looks pretty good too. Yeah, that makes sense. Mind maps. Thank you, Sergeant, for that. I do like that. Part of the joy of the mind map is the creation of the mind map. You want to be involved in this beautiful exploration of the brain. What's up, Jody? Workers' response. 1, I got nothing done. 2, I checked my email. 3, I cried. 4, I collected a government paycheck. 5, I let my other job know I could work some more hours. Thank you for that, Jody. Good stuff. Great to see everybody over on X. You can follow us over there at Rob Gov't ESQ if you care to join. We'd love to see you over there. But my friends, before we wrap it up, from Richard Myers, man, Richard, another big fat donut today. Thank you. Says Richard, Rob, the point that I'm making about probationary employees is that because they are probationary, there is no reason required for removal. So why give any reason for removal? To that point, the government was not required to give a reason. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So in other words, if you were in charge, your email to them wouldn't have had all of that additional stuff in there. Says, based on the agency's recent review and findings, we've decided that so on and so forth, and your skills are not necessary. Like all of that, you would have left that out. You would have just sent 2 words that say, you're fired. 2 words, you're fired. What? Get out. You're not even entitled to an explanation. Now, I think that is a good legal argument to make, right? It's like, Judge, we made the point. We gave them an explanation. We weren't even entitled to they're not even entitled to an explanation under the law, if that's what the law says. We gave them one. The fact that they're trying to use that justification to stop us from firing them is illogical. We don't need a reason to fire them. We gave one for their benefit. Now, again, their real argument, their complaint is that the firing was for the reason being that their performance was bad or something, even though that's not what they said. They just said your performance is not necessary. Your performance doesn't meet what we need. Doesn't mean it was bad or subpar. Your performance was excellent for Joe Biden. You did a great job for Joe. Amazing job. But we're not Joe Biden here. And under this standard, it's not so hot for us. So it's nothing bad that you did. You were hired for a prior administration. We just don't need you anymore. So stop crying. The Schmalls. What's up, the Schmalls? Became a supporter. Thank you, the Schmalls, for joining us. We, of course, will see you on the Membos Only stream tomorrow. Another one from Indoctrination. 2 babies today. 2 baby photos. Same baby. Here's another pic. I'm not sorry. I'm so proud. Oh, I understand completely. You got a beautiful baby. Look at that little thing. Babies are crazy, man. Oh my gosh, don't drop this little creature. It's a little scary. I'm not going to lie. Amazing Indoctrination. Thanks for sharing it. Ollie, will all of the Obama's term be obsoleted in any policy he made since the release of the fake birth certificate was confirmed? Will Trump now be 44 and 46? No, unfortunately, Ollie. That one's going to count. It's in the record books, even though it was probably illegitimate. Ollie, bringing in Cynthia R. Bass Godwin. What's up, Cynthia? Welcome, Ollie. Thanks for bringing in another friend. And Baby Lewis says, hey, Rob, on the phone with my brother. I don't know if you saw my 10-month member anniversary. I don't think so, Baby Lewis, because it doesn't show up like that on locals. So sorry if we missed that. Also, could we pray for my brother? Heck yeah. Prayers for Baby Lewis, Baby Lewis. Prostate cancer. They did not get all his numbers. They're increasing. Even though they were trying hormone therapy, he now has to start oral chemo. He lives alone, praying he doesn't get too bad side effects. Yes, we're going to send lots of prayers to your brother, Baby Lewis. Baby Lewis, heal quickly and get well soon. I'm glad to hear he's got good care. Cancer sucks, and we're going to be pulling for him. Thank you, Baby Lewis, for shouting out your bro. And hey, call me legend, all right? What's up, call me legend? So just wanted to say you rock, Rob. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate you back. Thanks for the nice dono. Thanks for being here and joining us on the day. Lots of prayers going out for baby Lewis's bro. We love our baby Lewis. We love our bros too. We love our bros. What's going on? All right. So my friends, that is where we are going to leave it on the day. It has been a beautiful Monday. We got some good updates. I expect many more updates tomorrow. Bunch of stuff got filed today. And so we'll see what the judges say tomorrow. And more specifically, we'll see what the DOJ says, the Pam Bondi DOJ, now that we'll see what Dan Bongino's doing. When does he start work? Is he going to live stream from the J. Edgar Hoover building tomorrow? I hope so. Sharpening Man in Texas just sent in 5 new membos. Welcome 5 new membos. And Lady Ice just shared a meme of a cat. Here's the government employees in cat form. What did I do today? What did I do? Why am I here? Am I even here? Do I exist if I don't reply? That's how many kitty cats are on the rag. All right, so my friends, it has been an amazing stream and a beautiful Monday. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Thank you for being membos. Thank you for inviting your friends and family to come on over here and join us when we go live. It's a ton of fun to have these conversations with you. I'm grateful for it. And we'd love to see you back here. So we are going to pause for the evening. I hope you have a tremendous sleep and you come back tomorrow to get into it again, because we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.